Alright, so the Carter McSwaggins continuity is already in shambles, because in my last video, I said I would do a God of War review next. But at the tail end of editing that video, I was invited to participate in the Skull and Bones closed beta. Given the fact that it's just a beta and it's only open for a very limited amount of time, this first impressions video is kind of a now or never situation, so the God of War video will be directly after this. Skull and Bones is made by Ubisoft, which I do have a spotty history with. They're not really my favorite company. I haven't played an Assassin's Creed game that I like. I think that most Far Cries are tedious and aren't innovative enough. And I don't have fun on Rainbow Six Siege because, well, honestly, it's just a skill issue. But I'm still not having fun. But I am very grateful to Ubisoft for sending me a code, and I went into this game with only goodwill, as this is a brand new franchise and could be fantastic. I love the pirate genre and the stories you can tell, so I was very excited to play this game. So let's get into my first impressions with Ubisoft's Skull and Bones beta. I think the most polite way to put this is to say that Ubisoft is very consistent. My instinct is to say that I was very disappointed with this game, but that's not even the whole story. I quite literally expected nothing from this game. I could not be disappointed going into this game. But then as I finished the tutorial and progressed through the early stages of the game, I thought, oh, alright, this is probably going to be really rad when I get into the main gameplay loop and learn all the mechanics and get a full-size ship. But then as I went on, I realized that I was already in the main gameplay loop. Granted, this is just a beta, and I only had 6 hours of playtime, and due to my schedule, I was only able to play 3.5 hours, but the last 3 hours of those 3.5 hours of playtime were exactly the same. It essentially boiled down to running errands for people who run their mouths and are constantly dissing me with a pirate filter. There definitely were some parts of the gameplay loop that I did enjoy, which I'll get into, but overall, I found this beta version of the game to be a letdown, as it hyped me up but ended up being exactly what I expected. At the very beginning of the beta, I got a somewhat impressive opening cutscene that transitioned into ship combat, which was pretty good. Again, maybe it's because it's a beta, but the cutscene was lagging. Not the best first impression, but the combat was very fun. The pirate ships were pretty fun to control, albeit a little too easy. I feel like giant ships like these should be slower to turn, but maybe I'm wrong. My captain's license just expired, so I haven't been at the helm in a long time, so I could be misremembering, but I don't think they're supposed to turn on a dime like that. I did like how you could ram your ship into the enemies, and you had to lead your cannon shots. There was no visible damage taken to the other ships, unless I hit the cargo outlined in red, which was a bit disappointing. But one detail I do appreciate is how shot placement matters and is reflected in damage. The enemy ship's health bar will tank faster if you hit it at the save line as it starts to take on water. There were some issues where I felt like a lot of my time was wasted because the game gave me missions I was underleveled for, and I would just keep dying over and over until moving on to something significantly lamer and less engaging, like cutting down acacia trees. And by the way, when I do cut those trees down, I don't get off the ship and go cut it down myself. No, I park the ship by the shore and play some shoddy Dead by Daylight skill checks. In fact, the main island hub and some very small and one-note shipwrecks are the only places you can get off your ship. You spend the majority of the time raising the sails, then pressing X to get a speed boost and waiting for the stamina to deplete, then doing it all over again when it recharges. Hearing that may raise some alarms. When I think of pirates, I think ships, buried treasure, and sword fights. But the only combat in this game is naval. In the beta, there is absolutely no sword or flintlock combat. Maybe it'll be there in the full release, but I'd imagine that if you want to give players a good idea of what the game will be, you'd put in a taste of what the game has to offer, and not chop off an entire form of combat. Unless that form of combat is tedious and poorly designed, which, remember, this is an Ubisoft title we're talking about. Honestly, maybe it's a blessing that there's no on-foot combat though, as the movement in this game is super slow and sloppy. And as if living out a staple of the genre wasn't bad enough, there is no PvP in the beta. Now this I can actually see being in the full release but not the beta, as they didn't want anyone to get bullied in their limited playtime. But battling it out on the high seas with a real person would definitely be more fun and be more exhilarating. I can definitely see how newcomers and their rinky-dink ships getting bullied in the full release would be a problem. But not only is the lack of PvP in the multiplayer a bit obnoxious, but there's no point to the multiplayer. I played this game with my friend Kevin because Ubisoft let me generate another code to give to a friend, and he's a big Sea of Thieves fan. We got into a party, and all that really did was ensure that we were in the same lobby. It was essentially just parallel play. There was no option to do missions together and be on each other's ships. We were just doing them at the same time. Even things like engaging in dialogue to start the mission were done completely individually. in a setting where the main mode of transportation has to have more than one person literally just to operate it. Why can't you have friends in your crew? This was honestly probably the most disappointing part of Skull and Bones to me. One thing that isn't featured in Skull and Bones that I think the game could greatly benefit from would be a faction system, where if you attack one of the Royal Company's convoys, they'll be more hostile against you in the future, but you'll get discounts or assistance from other sailors who are also enemies of the Royal Company. This game has okay customization with very limited face models that are reused for NPCs, and pretty good outfits that are really hard to access. So hard that me trying to buy a pair of pants crashed the game twice. This beta was riddled with issues like this and was technically underwhelming. Again, this is just a beta, so I do have a lot of leniency towards the bugs, but my game crashed a total of 4 times. The water looks great, but looks really horrible when it hits the shore. It's really framey, and each room is loaded individually. Some models just lazily have a texture stretched over it. The lip movement is auto-generated, and it's not generated well. There's bad pop-ins, and just look at the skybox, dude. The best way I can spin this skybox to be positive is that Skull and Bones provides the very unique experience of feeling like you're playing in a diorama, a feeling that I haven't felt since Disney Infinity. You know, sometimes I feel like each lead developer for every Ubisoft game starts off with a great idea and executes on it really well for the first 90% of production. And then they have a Phineas Gage moment where a railroad spike launches into their head and they tell their team to tank the game as fast as possible. All of their games have great concepts and then just drop the ball in the most mediocre way. I feel like they make games that are the lowest common denominator. Think of a game. Not any game in particular, just the concept of a video game. Yeah, that's Assassin's Creed. They're template games, and Ubisoft has decided to make a template pirate game. Except this time, there's no hand-to-hand combat like there was in 2013, and they market it using shanties that got popular off of TikTok. I am thankful for the invite from Ubisoft to the closed beta, really. I'd like to receive more from them, and I want them to make good games and succeed. But to be honest, the only way I could see myself reviewing this game is if they give me a review code, or if Kevin buys it and convinces me it got better. I truly hope they improve the game in the 2 months before it releases, but right now, I don't think that this game's mechanics, systems, or gameplay loop are good enough to justify a full campaign. Maybe instead of Skull and Bones, a more apt title would be C Tier of Thieves. Or Sea of P. Or Sea of... Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was really short compared to my other ones, but I mean, it was a 3.5-hour experience. I was pretty excited to play this beta and see where Ubisoft was taking this new IP, even if I was disappointed in the end. Leave a like if you liked the video and tell me what you think of the game. Whether or not you also played the beta, or if you're just anticipating or dreading its release. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys later.